this episode, we talk about suicide, suicidal thoughts, and mental health struggles. If you are ever struggling with any of these things, we urge you to reach out to a professional or somebody that you trust. We will link support down below, and we are always here for you.
Biochemically, their brain is behaving completely differently. You are just in full survival mode. We are trying to develop better methods for actually studying women's bodies, because everything has been designed around studying male bodies since science existed.
To see science changing in a way, and people like yourself actually who care, and actually someone that has PMDD putting in their time to be able to create a device that could change the game for people with PMDD and actually get the stats, the figures, the results, the scientific evidence.
I would get so overwhelmed, so angry, so upset with myself and think, what's wrong with me, that I'd bang my head against doors and walls and things. Trauma does have a very physical effect on the body, and it doesn't need to be like big T trauma either. I think what makes PMDD so much worse is the self-blame.
Welcome to the Hormonal Hotline podcast with me, Ellisha Blake, the podcast where we talk about all the things that would usually stay in a group chat, but there are no boundaries here. We're having raw, honest and open conversations, and I want to thank you so much for being here. Let's get to it. If you have ever felt like a different person the 2 weeks before your period, maybe you didn't want to be here, you were spiraling, you wanted to break up with your partner, you couldn't get out of bed, your brain just felt like it was filled with a grey cloud, this episode is for you, because I am here today talking about PMDD. My name's Ellisha Blake, I have PMDD myself, and this is the Hormonal Hotline. I am here today with Elena Venturelli, who is a scientist, PhD researcher, women's health educator, and also a content creator. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's get to it straight away. What is PMDD? Because not everyone knows what it is. And I think it's important that we just start straight in, dive straight in. What is it? And
there is a lot of misconception about what it is and what it isn't. Yeah. So basically, it is a extreme sensitivity to hormone changes that manifests as, it can be very debilitating with depression, anxiety in the 10 to 12 days leading up to your period in your luteal phase. Normally then alleviates as soon as you get your period. And a lot of people think that it's some related to PMS, and that the name also implies that it's kind of a more severe version of PMS, and that is an easy way to explain it, but it fundamentally has different causes. Most people have some form of PMS, so it's quite easy to sort of dismiss PMDD as being something like not that serious, but actually it is often linked to other like different forms of neurodivergence, because it is such a extreme brain sensitivity to those hormone changes.
Yeah, and I think it took me so long to figure out A, what PMDD was, but B, it took me so long to figure out that my PMDD symptoms were cyclical. They were coming every month, and I never quite nailed it. I never quite nailed it down to it being just before my period. I thought I was just being, I don't know, kind of like a psycho at some point in my life. And I was like, oh, I'm just really unhappy. But actually, it takes people so long. Can we talk about the symptoms? We'll go more into like your story in a minute as well. But let's talk about the symptoms. What if someone thinks they've got PMDD? What could their symptoms be? What might they be experiencing right now?
So like you could wake up in the morning just suddenly, 10 days before your period with like visceral sort of feelings of sadness.
Yeah.
Just like for me, it was almost like a veil had kind of fallen.
I always say like a dark cloud.
Yeah. Like it's just so sudden and intense, and it's really random. Like even though you know that there's good things in your life, you can't see them, and there's no specific trigger for it. You just wake up feeling like that. And that's what like the depression part of it is. And it's just debilitating, not wanting to get out of bed, having no energy to do anything. And then people can also get, which is very common, extreme emotional reactivity, getting really triggered by the tiniest thing that normally wouldn't trigger you, like, your partner not washing their socks or something. And then you just feel like overcome by rage. And it can feel kind of almost like your whole body is shaking with rage. and you just sort of think to yourself, why am I reacting this way? Like this, not, you know, it's not a big deal, but something about your body like is like life or death.
I literally used to have these anger attacks where I would be like a toddler and I would clench up and be, and I think a lot of it was probably a lot of unprocessed trauma, but I would literally clench up and just shake and scream with rage for literally 10 minutes, and I'd be, what has come over me? And then I'd have a panic attack, and then I'd get through it, and then my partner would be like, what on earth? Like crazy.
It can be, and it's sudden, right? And it's just like so out of character for you, and people often say they feel like they're a completely different person during that phase of their cycle, and in a way they are a different person because biochemically their brain is behaving completely differently. You are just in full survival mode, and it's really easy to blame yourself when you're reacting that way and think, well, this is something that I'm doing, there's something that I'm doing wrong, but actually it's the hormone changes that have made you feel that way.
Yeah, and I think the hardest thing with PMDD is how much you gaslight yourself. And you have those 2 weeks in your luteal phase where you feel like a different person, like you say, and your relationships are affected, your work is affected, and then you bleed. And I don't know about your experience, and we'll go more into that in a second, but I know for me, 4 days into my period, my PMDD symptoms sort of last a few days in. But when some people say they literally bleed and it's instant relief, that it's instant, it's genuinely instant. And I think that's the hardest part, because it's like, I've been a different person, I've been horrible. And then you have to go and fix all of the things you've basically messed up for those 2 weeks before your period.
Yeah, so it doesn't just affect you like during that week, it also, you know, it has a knock-on effect for the rest of your life, especially because if you struggle to get out of bed for that week or 10 days, and then you have like a lot of catching up to do, and it can cause a lot of stress and mental health problems outside of that week as well. So that, and on top, so it is, you know, it is something that really you do have to deal with all the time, even though it is, the symptoms only are mainly in that phase. It is so difficult for people to understand how you can be fine sometime and the rest of the time you are really not fine. You have a serious problem.
Yeah, and you can have good months as well. And I think when you have those good months, people are like, do you even have it then? I've had like 6 good months in a row before, and then it comes back and slaps you in the face, and it's just like the worst. And I think, as you know, the kind of more stress you're going through in life, or a really bad patch, like I know when I was going through really bad grief, my PMDD symptoms really came back up, and it's just like, why does that happen? Why does that happen?
Well, I mean, yeah, it basically, what the reason you get the symptoms and that your brain reacts so strongly to the hormones is they think it's to do with the immune system and to do with brain inflammation.
Interesting.
So if say, even if you're physically sick, or you have a really stressful period in your life, or, you know, maybe you had too much alcohol or something like a few weeks before, that can impact your immune system, which then can have a knock-on effect on your brain, causing more brain inflammation than normal. And then that's what then causes the extreme sensitivity to that.
God, there's so much research that needs to be done, because when I started on TikTok, people would be like, well, you just get your hormones checked, but PMDD cannot be tested by getting your hormones checked, because it's to do with the sensitivity in the brain, right? It's not to do with the fluctuations of the hormones. Is that right?
Yeah, it's so the hormones can be completely normal. You might have a completely normal, you know, average 28-day cycle, which no one really has anyway. But even if you have that, you can still be extremely sensitive to those changes. So a blood test is meaningless to you, really, because your hormones can be completely normal. It's not a hormone imbalance at all. It is possible to have hormone imbalances as well, which don't help. That's why a lot of women find that during perimenopause, their symptoms get worse if they have PMDD, or some people might have had a bit of PMDD throughout their lives but don't notice until perimenopause, because in perimenopause, your hormones naturally start to fluctuate more, your cycle lengths become more inconsistent, you get a lot of sort of more extreme fluctuations, and because of that, your brain is like more often having to like deal with those hormone changes. It's
horrible how much, like, when we talk about later on in life, I always think it's going to get better, you know, my PMDD has got better, and then I'm like, oh, then the perimenopause comes, then the menopause. It's just like quite depressing, isn't it, sometimes when you look ahead?
Yeah.
As like someone that has periods, it's like, oh, please help me.
Yeah, you sort of have to go through everything going a bit crazy before then finally you don't have those fluctuations anymore, and then that's when, you know,
I do think though, precautionary action mention, like, kind of what you were saying, how you have to tailor your cycle around your PMDD. I definitely have got a hold of my PMDD from looking after myself more in my follicular phase when I'm on my period, and kind of doing the prep work before I go into that awful phase, whether that's taking Evelyn supplements, whether that's, I don't know, really slowing down and working on nervous system regulation and going to therapy and, you know, really communicating with people before I get into my luteal phase. But it's so tiring. It's tiring to manage. It is tiring. Let's move on to your PMDD story, because I want to know sort of how you got into everything you do. I really want to know how you got into this field, and how, as someone with PMDD, how you've ended up, doing all of this. I think it's incredible. Yeah,
well, thank you. Well, so I actually, like, my science background is completely different. I did physics, and
she's a clever girl.
But I decided that I didn't want to do anything other than, like, help women with PMDD. So I found a PhD sort of project that would enable me to work on a hormone device to improve it so that it actually works for women's hormones. And the reason this is important is because one of the reasons that PMDD and other women's health issues are so misunderstood and there's such a lack of help for people is because we don't have the right tools in science to be studying women's cycles properly. And so my sort of work currently is very sort of foundational in the sense that we are trying to develop better methods for actually studying women's bodies, because everything has been designed around studying male bodies since science existed. And as a result of that, I hope to then be able to actually do studies with women who have PMDD and, you know, other women's health conditions that are actually meaningful and that can actually sort of help people more than a lot of the current ones do, or a lot of the current information is pretty lacking.
And what is the device? Do you mind talking a bit more about that?
So it's basically a belt that inserts just below the surface of your skin, like part of it inserts just below the surface of your skin, of your torso, and it collects your hormones 24/7. So
like a heart monitor or something?
Well, it's actually physically taking hormones from just underneath your skin.
Wow.
So it's minimally invasive, and it can take samples every 15 minutes, so throughout the day and night, because you wear it constantly. So because of that, instead of having a single blood test where you don't really know what the context is of that, like when did you eat, when did you sleep, how stressed you were, you know, hormonal blood tests can only tell you so much, and they're like a single sort of screenshot in a whole movie of what's going on with people's hormones.
Yeah.
So if we're able to take samples throughout the day and night, we can actually see, okay, how does, you know, having this for breakfast impact your hormones? How does doing this type of exercise impact your hormones over, you know, real people's lives in real time, to see how, or can we actually manage these things better, and how can we treat them better?
That's insane. And when will this be available?
So it's very, very early stages. It's currently it currently works well for cortisol.
Okay.
So there's been...
Which is a real buzzword on the internet at the moment.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Cortisol belly, cortisol.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm always like, I've got high cortisol, but then it's crazy.
Yeah, it is a bit more complicated than kind of just having high cortisol, because the sort of hormonal system is very much about equilibrium and kind of different things interacting together. And that's why it's sort of important to understand what all the different hormones are doing. But cortisol, is an adrenal hormone, so it's a stress-related hormone. And those hormones do interact with the sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone as well. So, you know, they sort of have a knock-on effect of those types of hormones. And the studies that have been done so far have been able to sort of show how human cortisol patterns work over 24-hour periods. And we want to do the same thing for women's hormones, so that we can do studies to sort of build on that and like prove it. But it's very early stages, and it's very kind of based on medical science. So, you know, that next year there's not going to be people like walking around wearing belts. Like, it's going to take quite a few years for this to be a thing, and initially it will be sort of only within scientific studies that it will be used.
Sign me up. That's incredible. I'm excited, and I want you to keep us updated on that, because I think at the moment people are just so helpless with PMDD, and they don't always have places to turn, and they don't have people to talk to, and they're looking at obviously like all of these studies that have been done, but you just kind of end up banging your head against the wall because you're like, what now? Well, where do I go? And I think to see science changing in a way, and people like yourself actually who care, and actually someone that has PMDD putting in their time to be able to create a device that could change the game for people with PMDD and actually get the stats, the figures, the results, the scientific evidence. I just think it would be nice to present that to a GP or a doctor and be like, yeah, I'm not making this up. I've had a belt. I've had a hormonal belt monitoring me for a month. Yeah, like, I think that's insane. That's incredible. So I really do want to touch on your PMDD story, and yeah, talk to me about how PMDD has affected your life, and how did you know you had PMDD? How did you get diagnosed?
So I started showing symptoms when I was about 14, and I actually had this habit of like banging my head against things like on purpose. Like I would get so overwhelmed, so angry, so upset with myself and think what's wrong with me that I'd, bang my head against doors and walls and things. And my mum noticed that it was actually cyclical, and then after a couple of years I saw a gynecologist who happened to know what PMDD was, even though at the time not many gynecologists did, but I was very lucky to get a diagnosis then when I was about 17, and yeah, it basically... So
it took you 15, 16, 17, 18, 3 years?
3 or 4 years, yeah, since like from the time where I started really suffering to actually getting a diagnosis. But that is actually really below average for women with PMDD. The average is about 12 years.
Yeah, I was about that.
Yeah. And I think the worst part is like going on for so long, sort of having these patterns and not being able to sort of be kind to yourself and understand that actually it's not your fault, because some people spend their whole lives thinking that they're a terrible person because they can't control their emotional reactions like everyone else can.
I've had like people that have gone through the menopause message me on my TikTok and literally say, I've gone through the menopause now, I don't have periods, but because of you, I've now realised I've lived an entire life with PMDD and I didn't know what it was, and my life has been hell for the last 40 years, and that's so sad. Like
it's heartbreaking. Like, and people shouldn't have to do that, like just because it's a thing that's related to hormones and people don't understand women's bodies properly.
Yeah. So you went to the gynecologist when you were 17?
Yeah.
And did they tell you what PMDD was, or did you already know?
No, they said, I think you have PMDD. So, and I hadn't heard of it before.
That's amazing, actually.
Yeah, but even after I knew what it was and I had the diagnosis from the gynecologist, I seek support from mental health services. I seek support from an endocrinologist, from various different GPs, and no one knew what it was. So the actual diagnosis itself was pointless because I kept having to explain what it was to everyone anyway, and the mental health teams were saying we can't treat you, it's hormonal, and then the endocrinologist I actually got a letter in the same week, one from an endocrinologist saying you're too young, we don't want to help, we can't help you, and the mental health team saying we can't help you because it's physical. I
have a friend like this, and she has been passed from like department to department to department, back forth, and she's just honestly, she's like, I'm done. Like, I don't know what to do because no one will have me. No one will tell me like what it is. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, we just fall through the cracks completely. Like, there are no systems in place for people who suffer with this, and it's like people desperately need help with this. Like, you are so much more likely to you're actually more likely to have suicidal ideation than people who are diagnosed with like chronic depression.
That's
when
crazy,
you have PMDD, which is it's just like, and people are just being completely abandoned.
Yeah, and I guess sometimes when you're having those thoughts, I just thought that was so normal. I thought it was so normal. I'd be like, well, I don't want to be here. Like, that's, everyone thinks like that, don't they? And then when you start talking to people, and that's why it's so important to talk about it. Like, even us having this conversation today, like, it's so important to speak about it, because actually it's really not normal to feel like you don't want to be here before your period. So after you got sort of handed around, and what route did you decide to take?
So I was really lucky, and I found a menopause clinic that prescribed me HRT.
Okay.
And I was actually the youngest person they'd ever given it to, because I was so desperate.
It's quite a slay. Slay queen. Did you get a medal?
No, I wish I had a medal. I brag about it often enough.
That's like an MBE in the PMDD community.
And because it was I tried so many different contraceptive pills via like GP and gynecologists and stuff, and I actually hallucinated on one type of hormonal contraception. I was like seeing blood and sort of like laughing hysterically, and my friend and rolling on the floor naked, like, what? And my friend was like, "This girl is insane," and it was because I just started taking a oral contraceptive pill.
No way! Yeah. Oh my god!
I'm so sensitive to the hormones.
I have never heard of those symptoms. Like, I had a terrible headache and like the normal symptoms, but hallucinations. That's the thing.
Yeah, it was bad. So I couldn't take any sort of form of synthetic hormone. Never again. No, I can't do that. So they tried me on this HRT, which is bioidentical. So it's just the same estrogen that your body produces.
Okay. So it mimics it almost.
Yeah, so it mimics it. Whereas the sort of chemicals in the hormones in hormonal contraceptives are like synthetic versions. So I take estrogen. I still do. Rub it into my skin every night, and it sort of stabilizes it. So it helps me to cope, basically, because it's my hormones aren't fluctuating as much, although I still have to take progesterone every month for 10 days. So I have to mimic having a luteal phase to protect my womb. And the problem is I'm progesterone sensitive, but you have to take progesterone sometimes unless you sort of have a hysterectomy or something. So when I take the progesterone, I get PMDD symptoms.
Oh no! So
but they're not as bad.
You're giving yourself mild symptoms.
Yeah, like I notice that I get it's better now because of sort of other things that I've done as well, and like other like things to take care of myself. But yeah, I still notice I'm more emotionally reactive. I am more likely to feel down for no reason. I'm more likely to kind of be irritable and just kind of feel off, like when during that phase, but it's less severe than it was. So it helped me to, I would have like dropped out of school, I wouldn't have gone to university like if I didn't have that. So I was extremely lucky. Yeah, I was extremely lucky to like get that when I got it, because I just I couldn't go to school at the time that I was 17. I was like going to drop out of my A-levels. My mum would not, like, I just stayed in my mum's bed and she slept in the bed with me because she would not leave me out of her sight, because I was just didn't want to be here. That's
so traumatic for both of you. Like, yeah, she must even to this day still worry about you.
Yeah, she really does. Like we'll never, like, my whole family will like never get over that. Like, it's definitely affected my whole family. To sort of be in that darker place. But when I got the HRT, my mum actually I came downstairs like a few days after first having it. And my mum and dad were like crying downstairs, and I was like, "What's going on?" And they said, "Oh no, we're crying with happiness because we could hear you singing in the shower, and we haven't heard you sing or like laugh in years."
No, that makes me want to cry. Oh my goodness!
And that was like the improvement that I had like on those hormones.
It's so unfair. It's so unfair. This is what I just cannot stand. And it's the ripple effect of PMDD and what it has on your relationships and your family and your poor family. That's crazy. And what were you just stood there like, what do you mean?
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't know any better.
Also, there is this thing, people have been trying to find answers for themselves and, ways to help their PMDD for years. And I think often you don't know what's going to work and it's trial and error. But when you do find something, it must have been the relief for them to be like, after going through that crazy journey of seeing you, up and down, the yo-yo effect. That's wild. And do you think it's impacted your relationships with them to this day? Do you think you're closer with them because of what you had to go through?
It's been quite hard, but in a way, yes. Like it's kind of, I did have sort of a time where because of how much of a strain it puts on relationships, I wasn't very close with my family, and I ended up actually being quite disconnected with them as well, because I ended up in an abusive relationship. and this is quite a common thing for people with PMDD, which no one really talks about, is that because of what you kind of have to deal with, you're extra vulnerable to kind of gaslighting, because you already gaslight yourself, as you were saying, because you know, and the whole of, you know, you believe that it's your fault. So you've already internalized that kind of sort of
angst, rage.
Yeah, that's sort of
self-deprecation.
Yeah, like sort of anger towards yourself. And so when someone tells you, you know, you're wrong, like the things you're saying are wrong, your behavior is wrong, all this stuff, you believe them, and so you are more vulnerable to being in that kind of situation.
And how old were you when you were in this relationship?
20.
I was in a similar situation.
Wow.
17 to 19, that time. Very interesting. As you were saying this, alarm bells were going off, and I was thinking, wow,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm so sorry you went through that, and I'm guessing it was an awful time, and also probably your symptoms were probably dreadful.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it so much worse, right? When if you have sort of someone who you're punishing yourself for having those symptoms, and then someone else is kind of punishing you for it as well, like, you know, emotionally and stuff.
Oh my goodness, especially at that age, you don't realize how vulnerable you are as well. And we deserve to be with people that will support us and be able to hold us and understand. But also at that age, it's hard for a partner to understand as it is. But then on top of that, if they're a raging narcissist and they're not going to be able to create that safe home environment and regulate your nervous system when you're feeling, you know, dreadful, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
disaster.
it is, absolutely.
And I'd actually say, I don't know if you can agree with this, but when you however you got out of that awful time, and I'm guessing because you were saying about your family, you are isolated at that point, aren't you? By the time you leave one of those relationships, you're by your friends, your family, you're completely isolated, and that makes everything so much harder as well. I think by that point you've lost all support systems, which for people with PMDD, we need our support systems.
Absolutely. Like one of the most important things is to have people around you who actually know that it's not your fault, who understand why you're behaving that way, and who are able to, you know, communicate with you in a way and sort of have boundaries between you so that you can be prepared for those like situations happening. Because without that, you know, it's just a recipe for disaster.
And how long were you in that relationship?
4 years.
Wow. And I'm guessing after you did you go to therapy after? And
luckily it was a whole thing. Like I actually I lost my house. Like I lost like most of my possessions and my money and things, and because he was like really controlling. And I had to like rebuild my friendships and like my relationship with my family and things as well, to an extent.
I'm so sorry.
It was like it, but I learned a lot from it. Because it gives me sort of that perspective of this is what people can go through. Especially when you already have serious issues. And you know, it's been valuable in a lot of ways because it gives me a better understanding of how I work, and what is good for me and what isn't, especially what
people isn't. Like what kind of people are good for you? Who do you want in your life? I so agree with you. I always think if I hadn't had that awful time, I think it brings up a lot of childhood stuff as well, right? When you go through one of those awful relationships. But also I think I would never have done the work that I've done. I never would have. I've been in therapy like nearly on and off 5-6 years, never would have done it. And you come out so much stronger the other side. And as you say, you can then look at other people, and now you're aware that, you know, people with PMDD are more likely to end up in an abusive relationship. I've never heard that before, but the fact that you've just said that, I'm like, there'll be people listening to this that will be like, oh my goodness, that can completely relate to what we're saying. Wow, I'm so sorry you went through that, but like,
I'm sorry too.
You're still, we're here, girl. We're still standing. Oh no, honestly, we're PMDD, like anyone with PMDD, we are warriors in every sense. It doesn't matter what you've been through. everyone with PMDD has a story.
Absolutely, yeah.
This podcast literally wouldn't be possible without Evelyn. Beyond producing it, they have personally helped me on my PMDD journey. I am literally in my luteal phase right now, and I'm telling you, it makes me emotional. 3 years ago, there's no way I could have even sat in this chair, done this podcast, or done anything in my luteal phase. I used to feel like I didn't want to be here before my period, like there was a big cloud looming over me, and life just felt so heavy in the 2 weeks before my period. But since I've started Evelyn's supplement routine over a year ago, genuinely my whole life has changed. I feel like I can live again before my period, turn up and do things like this, socialise. Everything around me has improved, and I feel like I can really be myself again in my luteal phase. Evelyn makes science-backed, hormone-free supplements designed by experts for people like me. If you're struggling with your period, I honestly would urge you to give them a try. If you'd like to try them today, go to evelynhealth.com or use the link in our show notes and you can use Hotline 20 for 20% off your first order. I'm actually really interested to know the link between trauma and PMDD, because so many people in my community have all said, I had early onset trauma, I had a terrible childhood. I had a very interesting up and down, traumatic childhood. And I'm just very interested to know the link between PMDD and trauma.
Yeah, so there's actually been a really interesting study saying that you're 4.5 times more likely to have PMDD if you did suffer with early trauma from childhood. So, and it's really interesting because equally, there is something like a 50% heritability rate as well. So you're 50%, you have a 50% chance of developing PMDD if one of your parents had PMDD.
This puts me off having children. I don't want them to have it.
I let me kind of expand a bit on this, because I felt exactly the same way and then I changed my mind, and I'm going to sort of tell you why. But basically, there's a lot of misunderstanding in science, especially of, well, how can something be genetic and also be caused by trauma? Like, how does that work? And actually, most things are a mixture of both. Like nothing, like your genes are essentially like an alphabet, and the letters on their own don't really make sense, like unless you have the words to put them into, and the words are formed by things in the environment. So what happens is, depending on your early environment, that can then trigger certain genes to play a role. And one of the sort of most proven genes for things is actually, for anything related to mental health, is sensitivity, just general sensitivity. And that can end up manifesting as, you know, a form of neurodivergence or various sort of like mental health issues. But there is no single gene for PMDD. So that's kind of why you can, you might sort of have a family, say, where one daughter has severe PMDD but the other daughter doesn't. The reason behind that might be because they may both be sensitive, but the early experiences of one could have been more difficult than the other, and as a result, that could then lead their their brains, their immune system to kind of fire a lot, like a sort of like stressful experiences
live in a more dysregulated state. So stressful experiences, dysregulate your immune system and your hormones as a result, but also your brain. So then you can become more sensitive because of that. And I think so it's quite an interesting thing, and I think there is more of a link than people even believe. Like, I think because some people will say, well, I have PMDD, but I've never, I had a great childhood. And that was me. Like, I had the most idyllic childhood. Like, I grew up in Tuscany. We had like all these like fields. We were like, Stunning. Just me and my sister just like running through these like vineyards and stuff. So it was amazing. It's a dream.
Yeah, it was so idyllic. And I had such a happy time. And so, it was devastating for my family to even consider the fact that maybe I had a trauma and that's what kind of caused my PMDD, but it's not quite that simple. A lot of people, you are way more likely to have it if you had a really difficult childhood, definitely, but you can also still have it if maybe you were born sensitive already because of genetics, and then, you went through some kind of situations, maybe in nursery school or whatever, with strangers or that led you to kind of then be in that like sort of heightened state of kind of dysregulation and reactivity when you were younger.
Which also, as well, if you're neurodiverse, you're more likely to live in a dysregulated state, right?
Yes, exactly.
Which will then lead to PMDD.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And everyone does have some form of emotional wound from early life, even if their parents were like the perfect people. Other environmental things are gonna have an impact on them. So I think that's it, and it's never the parents' fault anyway, really, because it's like the environment that the parents were in and how they grew up, and so it's never sort of, there's never about blaming any individual person for these things. It's not about blaming yourself, it's not about blaming your parents, it's about blaming anyone. But it's often kind of misunderstood as something that if you say it's trauma related, it's like, oh, it's blaming the parents, but it's not at all like that. It's sort of far more complicated. But yeah, interesting.
That's crazy. I mean, so do you think, this is I'm like using you as a personal PMDD resource, but do you think if I hadn't had a crazy childhood, there could have been a chance I wouldn't have PMDD? Like I could have been susceptible to it, because I do think my mum probably had it, but I'm just interested that if I had grown up in the most nurturing environment, obviously, as you say, like I'm going to be affected from other things. But do you think a person, if they hadn't had an abusive father, shout out, do you think I wouldn't have had PMDD?
No, I don't think that. I think you probably would have developed it anyway.
Okay.
For other reasons.
Right.
So, because everyone kind of goes through some stuff, right? So you might have then developed that later on. I mean, some people do develop worse PMDD after they've been through a traumatic time in their life.
Like even childbirth.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I mean, postnatal depression is something that is sort of triggered by like a traumatic time as well, and any sort of a lot of autoimmune related conditions can also be triggered by traumatic times in your life. So trauma does have a very physical effect on the body, and it doesn't need to be like big T trauma either. It can be something that people would think is quite normal. You fell over even at school.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think like in terms of, worrying about having children and having PMDD and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to pass it on to my children. I think the most important thing like that I've realized is actually being aware that they will be sensitive to things will enable me to kind of help them. And even if they do have PMDD, I feel like there's enough sort of hope now, and there's enough tools, and there's enough like science being done where
they won't be in the dark.
And also they won't sort of, I think what makes PMDD so much worse is the self-blame, and is like the sort of environment that people are sort of forced to be in. And if you are aware of that, then I don't think it's like the worst thing in the world. Like I used to think it was just like, a sentence and like you're just going to suffer for the rest of your life. Yeah. But I don't feel that way anymore. And I think just sort of being aware that even if your child, does grow up with sort of PMDD because, things go wrong in life and then, they had some kind of emotional wound, then there are ways to deal with that. And as long as you're supportive,
you can put in the precautionary action and educate them in the way that basically they need to be, guide them in the way that they need to be guided. And I guess our generation of PMDD didn't have that.
Yeah.
And I think we'll be able to pass this on. And actually, I think Jared that set up Evelyn set it up because he'd had people in his life that had been affected. And then when he had a daughter, he was like, God, no, I can't let her, I can't have a daughter and not do something about this. Like there's other people out there that are suffering, and she could be one of them one day. And I think this is what's amazing about the future. And I know PMDD can be, like you say, like a sentence, a dark cloud, but there are people out here like yourself, Jared from Evelyn, and even this podcast, we're all trying to make a difference. And I think you're right. We don't need to feel depressed about the future. Like, it's going to be okay.
Things are only getting better. I mean, as you were saying, like, you know, our generation, we didn't know, you know, our parents didn't know. Before that, you know, our grandparents probably had,
they just got on with
PMDD,
it
but somehow, yeah. But, you know, and yeah, but we are in sort of a great position now where people awareness is growing so much. Like the fact that we're even here doing this,
it's insane.
This wouldn't have happened like 5 years ago.
When I was walking here today, genuinely pinched myself. I walked past Holland and Barrett actually, which was like, they were very important in the beginning of my PMDD journey. And I walked past there and I was like, this is a full circle moment, because if I hadn't posted that video, if I hadn't spoken about PMDD, and at this point I knew no one with PMDD, and I was like walking here today being like, I'm about to do an episode about something that I've suffered with my whole life, with someone that is, you know, doing the research for tomorrow and the PMDD sufferers of tomorrow. And I just thought, this is incredible. Like, yeah, it's really not as depressing when you actually lay it out and you're like, no, we've got this. Like, it's going to be okay. I wanted to touch on, because I'm very interested in this. So obviously people are constantly asking myself or Evelyn or anyone that has PMDD and talks about it online, you know, what did you do to help your PMDD? And obviously you went down the estrogen, like HRT route. I have remained mainly holistic, and I obviously take Evelyn monthly all the time. I don't know why I'm saying I take it monthly. I take it every day but I take it all the time for my cycle. And why do you think I've managed to really stabilize my symptoms? Evelyn has really helped, amongst many other lifestyle factors: diet, stress, therapy, nervous system regulation. Why do you think some people need estrogen and HRT, and why do you think some people are okay, like myself? I'm not saying that I've fixed it or I've completely healed it, but why do some people go holistic and some people go more down the medical route, and why does it work for some people and not others?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that it really depends on your state, the sort of stage that you're at as well, and you know, sort of your life. I mean, everyone's life is like a bit different. So some people might find that, you know, they need to go down like a, you know, hormonal medical route because they're maybe unable to sort of, because of their jobs or whatever, they're unable to do the kind of lifestyle changes that they know would be good for them, but they're kind of, you know, choosing at this point to, you know, focus on their career or something. So I think it's just really like it's different for everyone. And I think it's great that there's a lot of options out there for people to do work. But I think the most important thing is actually to spread out the strategies that you have, because it affects every part of your life. So why shouldn't, you know, you put as many things within your life as you can to help you? I think that, you know, it is better to have multiple strategies, you know, to go and something that I do, because I do like coaching for women with hormonal sensitivities and PMDD, is I like to think of it as like a sort of triad of hormones, gut and brain, and in terms of different ways that you can address it. So you can do the, you know, can do the hormonal route, you can do like the gut route, like supplements, sort of lifestyle, like diet, things like that, and then the brain route is more like, you know, therapy and like nervous system work and kind of dealing with like traumas and emotional wounds and things. So, and I think the best treatment for people is to combine those.
It's a collection of it all. Yeah.
Because the problem with, one of the major problems with PMDD as well is sensitivity, and you can't sort of control everything in your life. You're likely to get triggered at different points and have like it changes, right? Some months you're fine, other months are like a lot harder, and that's because like the circumstances change. You might feel more stressed, like, you know, you might have also kind of struggle a bit more in the winter because of lack of like vitamin D and sunlight and things. So all these kind of things are happening which are sort of taking things out of your control in a way, and so you don't know how you're going to be 1 month to the next, even if you are treated. So just kind of trying to take as many of those things like in baby steps into your hands as you can, and kind of look at it from those different angles. You can really sort of come up with a strategy where most of the time you're able to live your life normally, and even when you're not, you can sort of piece together the puzzle of, okay, out of these sort of 3 areas, which one have I been neglecting recently?
Yeah, I know that for sure. As soon as I'm a little bit slack with my supplements, or I haven't been getting enough sleep, or I've been drinking, or even being in the wrong environments for too long and being dysregulated, I know that when I get to my luteal phase, it's going to be fun. Do you have any supplements, obviously, that you take or that you recommend?
No, I mean, there's various studies on different kinds of like supplements. So there's, things kind of like magnesium and B12 and calcium and vitamin D. Like there's been sort of studies showing the efficacy of all of those. Yeah,
they were always my like OG supplements for PMDD.
Yeah. So I just kind of do like those basic ones, really.
Why do you think when people are trying to get diagnosed with PMDD, why do you think it takes so long for people to prove their point that they are going through something every single month and it is ruining their life?
I think mainly it's like women aren't really listened to when it comes to their own bodies. I think women's pain is dismissed, like women are dismissed as overly emotional or overly dramatic or hypochondriacs, and so the science itself that the medicine is based off of is misogynistic, because it is most studies were done just on men or mainly on men, even sort of ones that are sort of you would think would be more related to women. It would make more sense to study women for them. They didn't, because it's easier to study men, because women's hormones complicate studies, and so it's easier to it's quite hard scientifically, if you're controlling for a lot of variables, to take into account, what time of the month was this person, what time of the month was it for them, like what were their hormones. So they just kind of prefer to ignore it, which is sort of why I'm trying to sort of improve and build tools that stop that from happening so much. Like if we make it, you can't say that it's too difficult to include women anymore, because we have the tools for you to be able to do that. We have like the data.
Are there more studies being done now for people with periods, do you think?
Yeah, it is getting a bit better, but it's still not moving as fast as it should. Like I still within some of within the building that I work in, people will be sort of doing experiments on like rats or mice with like male with autism, but they won't be looking at like female rats. They're only looking at male rats. So, and I sort of always make a point to be like, did you include females in this trial? And I know that they didn't, but I'm like putting my hand up and just to kind of emphasize like, why are you doing this?
Thank goodness you're in these rooms. Sounds like they need you there.
But so that's something that's frustrating. And it's also kind of, when you look at research papers, especially around contraceptives, this is something that infuriates me. There is literally like papers that will be saying, women are, making myths about side effects of contraceptives. Like clearly, like a lot of the research that we're basing stuff on now was written in an extremely biased way against actually listening to women. And so there's no surprise that then you get that in medicine as well, because that's kind of what it's all based off of. And we just kind of need to change that attitude in science to, and to make it more inclusive to women and people with disabilities and different races as well, because it's so sort of white male centric that it's not representative for like a lot of different populations, and that those as a result, people end up with like worse health outcomes because of it.
Yeah,
because if you're not being part of that research, then that research doesn't really apply to you.
No, exactly. And it's like the whole seatbelt thing. Weren't like seatbelts only tested on men, and there wasn't anything done for women for like years, and safety in cars and stuff like that. And it's just like,
and when they did, they just basically shrunk the male like dummy and used and used that instead, and didn't account for like different body shapes and stuff. So women were like more likely to die in car crashes, and I mean women are more likely to be to have heart attacks but be misdiagnosed as having anxiety attacks.
I've heard about this. And people don't also want to perform CPR on women either.
Yeah,
I've heard. And also, do you see this changing? Do you think there are, I mean, I know that there are, I've spoke with many GPs now, not in a GP practice, but I've spoken with GPs through people I've worked with, and there are more GPs now that are aware of PMDD and who are sitting down and going to GP workshops with like the PMDD project and really actually and being like, I've had a lot of people present these symptoms and I want to know more, which I think is amazing. And I think a lot of the younger GPs that are now graduating, they do care, and they are very chronically online as well, which I think, you know, you and I talking about what we talk about online, I think actually many GPs can't avoid this anymore because people are literally going in and going, yeah, I've seen this girl on here and I'm exactly the same. And then the GP's like, maybe I should. But do you think things are changing?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's but when I first realised I had PMDD, there was nowhere near as much sort of awareness. And now, you know, talking to people, the amount of times before I would have to explain to people who I would expect to know what it was and they didn't know what it was.
Isn't that just bad PMS?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's just like infuriating. But now, like oftentimes, I'm noticing a lot more that people do know what it is, or at least they've heard of it. And there's a difference between sort of understanding what it is and not sort of thinking it's just severe PMS. But at least they've sort of heard of it as a disorder.
I love it when men have heard of it as well. I've been to like events and I'm like, so what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I make content on PMDD. And they're like, oh, I know, yeah, my cousin has that. And and I'm like, oh my goodness, wow. The message is getting around.
It is improving, definitely. And I think one thing that sort of really helps is like work like you do, you know, people who are making content, spreading awareness, like people who are also sort of making starting businesses in women's health and like femtech and things, because and sort of scientists who are, you know, representing, you know, women in science, so that we actually get to a point where we are more likely to then include women in things because it's women actually like running the studies. Yeah, we need more people in the room like you, basically. Like that's what we need. It needs to be more of an equal split, and there needs to be equality for all of these like studies, but also just in these conversations in these big boardrooms, you know, with these corporations. I think that's where things have just been so backwards for so long. I think it's really great. I think this conversation that we've had, obviously we know that dark cloud and how awful PMDD can be, but I think both of us, in obviously you're way more in the scientific field, well, you are in the scientific field, I'm not, I'm just a girl with PMDD, but I think it is generally, people are talking about it and it is more positive, and there, you know, the fact that there's now more support groups and there's more people out there and GPs, and there's charities that exist for PMDD and accounts on social media that didn't exist years ago. I think things are looking up, and I think if anyone is watching this, if you need any support, we are always here, but know that you are not alone and it is going to get better. Is that what would you say? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And just remember, like, it's not your fault, and please try and be kind to yourself, you know. My symptoms got so much better when I started having empathy for myself. It really, the psychology behind empathy and compassion and what it does for the nervous system is magic. Okay, so now we've got some quick fire questions. Are you feeling quick on this Friday morning? Oh gosh. Okay, so what's one symptom you didn't even realise was hormonal until someone named it? Can I, like, depression? You know, but people wouldn't think that depression could be kind of hormonally caused, you know? So I feel like, yeah, like people assume that, you know, you can't, like, that wouldn't, or that you don't want to be here. Like, you'd never think that your period would make you feel that bad. Yeah, you wouldn't. And I've actually like had people comment on my posts and things saying, oh, a doctor was like telling me off for saying I was depressed before my period, because like depression is like a real serious thing. And it's like, well yes, but you don't lie. Yeah, but you definitely can. Like, it is 100% depression. Just because it's not constant doesn't mean it's not real. Yeah. Oh, I so agree with that. I don't think I would have said that, but that's such a good answer. Well done. Very nice. Very good work. What's one thing you'd add to the NHS if you could design it around AFAB and female needs? Oh, we'd have like an actual service that is specifically for women AFAB individuals, like to understand our body, so that bridges the gap between, gynecology, endocrinology, mental health, something integrated where, because all of these things connect, but it's so difficult when you have a condition, even if it's like something like an autoimmune condition, which a lot more women than men have. It's so difficult to get support that encompasses all these different areas. So I think just some kind of system that allows multiple sort of health aspects to be included.
Yeah, I think that would be dreamy. I'm picturing like a little centre where you walk in and they're like, we can help you. And you actually leave feeling validated and listened to.
Yeah, and they have like a psychologist and a nutritionist and a gynecologist, and they have like everyone there who can kind of work together to help you.
Sounds like a nice hotel or something, to be honest. Wow. Let's add that to the NHS if we can. Last one. What's one thing you wish someone had validated for you sooner?
I feel like it's the anger. Like if someone has said it is actually biologically explained that you should be this angry because you're in this like heightened emotional state, your brain chemistry is like putting you in this survival mode, and actually you're not like a horrible person because of it. I think that would have, made me feel a lot better, because you just like, there's no, it's so difficult to be empathetic towards yourself, to have compassion towards yourself when you believe that the way you're reacting is like wrong, and that you have no reason to be doing that. Yeah, I feel that. And I think you feel so ugly when you feel angry, right? I used to feel so disgusting and like gross inside. And actually it would have been nice to have someone be like, no, it's okay to express that as well in like a contained, healthy way, like not taking it out on anyone else, but to just be able to have some kind of like, I don't know, whether it's boxing or painting fiery scenes or something, an outlet room. Yeah, I've started trying to do that, because I think it's there for a reason. Like your body is trying to express something, and you should kind of be listening to that in like a sort of healthy way. Wow, I love that. That's so true. And anger does, as we know, manifest into many illnesses. Yes. And I think it's, go and express yourself. Go get it out there, girl. Like ripping up paper. I used to love writing loads of stuff down. I mean, like burning it out the window. There's a lot of rage to be had, but we're gonna get through. We're gonna be okay. I genuinely feel like I have to go home and like rethink this whole conversation for the next few days, because you've given me so much to think about, but you are just a source of like energy and a magnet of information. And on behalf of the PMDD community, I'm just so grateful people like you exist, that you're making a change, turning your pain into research and actually making change for people with PMDD. And we needed this years ago, and the fact that you are here and you exist, thank you. Thank you from all of us at home and me. Thank you for coming today. Thank you so much. No, I had the best time, and you're amazing. We will definitely have you back. And that's a wrap on another Hormonal Hotline episode. Please be sure to subscribe, and please click the bell to get notifications. We cannot wait to have you back, and thank you so much for coming.